is legendary. My father, Ron Paul.
The revolution is alive and well in Texas, that's for sure. Glad to see so much support out here for Ted, and it looks like he has a lot of momentum. And Rand, let me tell you, needs lots of help, so send him the help that he needs. But you know, we've talked a lot about the Senate race, but you know there's a still ongoing presidential race in this country?
We got your back, Rod!
In fact, we're still counting the votes. Matter of fact, we're just starting to count the delegates. There's been many times that we've been written off, but on occasion now, almost like every day, there is another state that goes our way. It may turn out that we will be the actual winners of Iowa. We're winning a lot of these delegates that were written off in the past, but we're winning a lot of other things too, putting people in the right place, becoming chairman of the Republican Party in the various states. So the revolution is working. We have infiltrated the Republican Party, and we have converted the Republican Party to the defenders of liberty. Write the laws in Washington. It's supposed to be the Congress, but we know the courts overstep their grounds and their views, and they write laws. And what about the overstepping of their rights in the executive branch? Through the issuing of executive orders. It is the executive order that has given, supposedly, authority to the president to assassinate American citizens. Not too long ago, he used an executive order to renew the Defense Production Act, which was written in the 1950s, which is the emergency powers for a president in time of war to take over everything and total socialize the country. But he renewed it with an executive order, but he changed it just a little bit. This executive power that has supposedly been given to the president to declare this emergency in time of war, he changed it and said in times of peace as well.
Illuminati puppet!
I would suggest the quickest way to reverse this trend, and I believe it's completely constitutional, is we don't have to wait for legislative action. We need a constitutional president who will use the executive order in a proper manner to repeal all the executive orders that were misplaced in this republic. Executive order written back in 1973. Not too many people have talked about this, and they might not think it's too important. I happen to think it was very important. Unfortunately, or characteristically, maybe it was executed by a Republican president in 1973. And they established the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency. Now that is a totally unconstitutional vehicle for enforcing law. And just last week, I imagine many of you saw, there was a drug bust. They don't know what they were doing. They were suspected of using something a lot safer than alcohol. But there was a SWAT team that went in and grabbed 7 young people on the campus of UC at San Diego. And they threw them all in jail, and then after they sorted out the paperwork, they released 6. And they just forgot about one person. And allowed this person to be in prison 5 days, no water, no food, and he was in critical condition, and he was in intensive care for 3 days, and he's going to survive. But then the question is, who's liable for that? Because there's a lawsuit filed, and I think a lawsuit is proper. And there should be a compensation. But I've always had a little trouble with those type of compensations being thrown back on the people. So why shouldn't it be when people are acting outside the law, outside the Constitution, those individuals who committed those acts that were illegal, why shouldn't they be personally liable for the corruption? Now, a few years ago, when the TSA got even more abusive, I introduced legislation along those lines. Of course, the best way to have taken care of the TSA was to vote against the establishment of the TSA to begin with, and to have voted against the Patriot Act, which gave them so much authority. But my suggestion in this legislation was that a TSA agent can do nothing that you can't do. So if you can't grope a stranger and you go to prison, if anybody at the airport gropes a stranger and he pretends he's allowed to because he belongs to the government, he should be personally liable and suffer the consequences. It is a shame that our government here in Texas didn't stand up stronger against the TSA. But let me tell you, there is another vehicle, and it's going to be used ultimately, and they're starting to use it, and that is nullification. The nullification has not been used throughout our history, but it was understood and was assumed to be a proper procedure where the states just ignore the feds when they come in and try to enforce illegal laws. But there are 2 states now, I believe it's Virginia and Arizona, they have passed, in a way, a nullification law about not supporting the military when they come in under the National Defense Authorization Act and arrest an American citizen, that they will not participate in those arrests. Of course, there is still this danger of how many federal policemen are carrying guns now. Before the TSA, I had a number, it was close to 100,000, so it must be much bigger now. As far as I'm concerned, under the way the Constitution was written, there was not to be any national police force. There was to be a defense force defending against enemies, but not to have a national police force coming in. But 100,000 plus now who come in to enforce regulations that are technically illegal, that all should be canceled out. We say no more of this. We want to take care of our own business and get the feds out of our lives and out of our lives. Everybody knows that we're in an economic crisis, a lot worse in other places than Texas. And one time, a few months ago, somebody asked me in the media, they said, who are you running against? And what one individual are you running against? I think they wanted me to say, you know, that 100% of our problems came from Obama, and I didn't yield to their temptation to say that, even though he's responsible for an awful lot of this. No, I said, the one individual I'm running against is Keynes.